Okay, so now we're going to be looking at the repeater module. Now the repeater module is in the tools flow and it is here on the top. And what this does is it allows you to repeat either the entire scenario or sections of the scenario. Now, normally you'd only be repeating a small portion of the scenario. What we'll do is we have an option here of, or two options, and we do also have an advanced settings here of the step, which is, a lot of people confuse this, and even I confused this when I first looked at this module. The step is not referencing where this repeater module is actually going to repeat from. The step is referencing how many steps this repeater module is going to take each time it repeats, right? So if we're starting at 1, which is step 1, right? So imagine you're on a staircase and you want to get to step 10. Well, you're going to step 1, right? You're going to step up one step at a time. But you've got the option here of taking a big stretch and stepping 5 steps each time, right? So we can step from step 1 to step 6, right? 1 plus 5 is 6. And if you're repeating 15 times, well, now you're going to reach the top of that staircase in 3 repeats. So a repeater with a 1 and a 15, so 1 initial value, that's where we start. We're starting on step 1, and we're repeating 15 times. There's 15 steps to the top of the staircase, but we're going to get to the top of that staircase by taking big strides across the steps, and we're going to cover 5 steps every time that we repeat, right? So this setup here of a 1, 15, and 5 gives you the exact same output as a 1 to 3 with a 1 step, right? If you have a staircase that's got 3 steps on it and you only take 1 step each time, it's going to take 3 repeats of stepping 1 step to get to the top of that staircase. If you have a staircase that has 15 steps, but each time you repeat, you take 5 steps, it's still only going to take you 3 repeats to get to the top of that staircase, right? So the stepper, you don't really need that, but I need to explain that because a lot of people add that and then they think it's like referencing the, the number of the module over here. It's not. So it's really just the initial and the repeats is what you'll be using 90% of the time. So let's just have a look here of adding a repeater module in here, and we're also going to add one. Let's add one in here. Let's add one maybe just before that in here. So we're just going to leave them both at 1 to 3. So that means that they're going to start counting at 1 and they're going to repeat 3 times, right? So the first iteration will be 1, then 2, then 3, then they stop, right? 1, 2, 3, stop. So let's run this now. So we can see we got a search. And remember, our search is returning 10 in this search. Then we said that we want to repeat this 3 times, right? So then we get 3 outputs, 1, 2, 3. And we should have had, oh, sorry, we've got 2 outputs here, sorry. So we got 2 outputs at the search module here. Then for each of those outputs, we then repeat it. We repeat for each of those objects, each of those items in the output. We repeat the following steps after this repeater module. We're going to repeat it 3 times for the same output. So here we've got one company for Microsoft, and Microsoft gets to our repeater module, and we say we want to repeat everything after this 3 times. So what make does is it basically goes, right, Microsoft, I'm going to create 3 versions of you, and the first version is going to then carry out all these things, and then the second version is going to carry out all these things, and then the third version is going to carry out all these things, right? But then what happens is we've got a repeater stacked on top of a repeater here. So we've got 2 companies which now have 3 repeats each. So now we've got 6 things here. Well, we've actually got 2 companies times 3. So we've got 6 things happening here, 6 outputs of data, right? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 6. Then from here, we should have 6 running for our filter, yes. And you can see we've got the 3 Microsofts running for our filter. Microsoft 1, 2, 3. Then we've got the 3 Apples, 1, 2, 3. Then we hit our next repeater module. Now we're also iterating contacts here. Yeah. So we iterate the contacts here. I think we get what? Well, we got 6 hitting here. And then for each of those contacts, we're then iterating them. So we must have had 15 returned. We're then iterating them 3 times each, right? So we're taking 15 contacts, and for 15 contacts, we're now duplicating them 3 times. So we should have 45 out of here, which we do. And now we're getting 45 contacts. In this case, we're actually only getting 4 contacts, but we're getting them, say, 11-ish times each. And then we're iterating, doing the rest sort of stuff here. So, and then we've got the filter there, in case you're wondering why that was only 18. It's because it's filtered out. So that's stacking the repeater module on. Now, it's actually a pretty simple module once you understand how it works and where it should be positioned, etc. So let's have a look at this in a real-life example. Now, in this example, we're creating a unique coupon code for Shopify, and we're saving that coupon code into Shopify, and then we're showing that unique code to a contact. So every contact in ActiveCampaign is getting a unique coupon code, which is giving them 10% off, let's say. And so we have to first create that code, it has to be unique. Then we have to send that code to Shopify, and then we have to send that to ActiveCampaign for that unique contact. And I think this is triggered from ActiveCampaign at the start of like a special deal or whatever. Now, how the repeater module comes into this is we're actually combining it with a aggregator module. So we want our code to be 5 digits long. And here we've got our list of characters that we're going to choose from, right? So we've got our set of characters. Then we're repeating from this point 5 times. Now, remember, we've just got at this point just the contact information, and we've got one contact from the webhook. Comes through, we set the characters that we're going to create the coupon from. Then we're going to repeat this 5 times. Now, we're only repeating up to the aggregator module because the aggregator, remember, is acting like a bucket. So we've got the repeater, which is acting like an iterator, and we're iterating the same thing. We're creating the same thing 5 times, and then we're collecting them all in the bucket at the end. So we're putting 5 things into the bucket, right? But in the middle, we're actually randomizing, and we're choosing a random character from the set of characters that we're using, right? So here we're basically getting a random number, timesing it by the length of the characters, and then we're flooring that out again to get the position of the character, right? So we're getting a random position of the characters in here. So when it runs, it might get position 5, and then it might get position 20, and then it might get position 30, etc. And that's how it randomly picks the characters from here based on their position value. So this would be 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. So we want to get 5 characters to create our coupon code. And so we get 5 random positions of the character. Remember, we're processing the same thing 5 times, but here we're not aggregating the original thing. We're aggregating the random character that we have chosen, right? That we've selected from our character list. So now what we're doing is we're just basically repeating the randomization of the character position, and then we're aggregating a substring of our set characters to then get that specific character that matches our position that we've created a random number for, right? Which will give us a fully randomized code of 5 strings long, 5 texts long or numbers long. And then we send that across to Shopify and send it across to ActiveCampaign. So that's one example of using a repeater. You could also use a repeater for creating multiple invoices, which I'll show you here. Okay, so here we've got another example of using a repeater module. Now here we're repeating based on a variable, and that variable is, I think, a count of the invoices minus the invoices that are created. So the invoices desired minus the invoices that are created. And then we get, how many invoices are left to create. That's how many times we're going to then iterate or repeat. And then we're just getting some invoice information. And then here we're basically using the repeater position, or I think we're using the number of repeats, which will be the number of invoices that we're creating, to then adjust the remaining amount that we're going to bill to the client. And essentially what this does, this repeater, is it just creates, say we want to create 3 invoices and we've got $100,000 to bill. What it will do is it just divides that 100,000 by 3, and then it repeats and it creates 3 unique invoices for $33,000, right? That's the output here. So that's an example of using a repeater with a dynamic input for the repeats. We've also got another example here of using a repeater for calculating out, this is calculating work days and workable days in a month. So we're repeating, this is for calculating a custom payroll period. So someone might start at a company midway through the month, and so that month we know is going to have X number of workable days and X number of days that have actually been worked. And for a salary employee who gets paid monthly, if they start on the 10th of the month, well, the simple solution would be we just pay them 2/3 of their salary, right? But this particular client wanted to take it a step further, and they only wanted to pay them based on the percentage of the workable days that they had worked for that month. Now, if you start 10 days into a month, but that 10th day of the month is a Monday, then the remaining workable days may be, I don't know, maybe say 15. And if you, on the next month, the workable days remaining may only be 12, right? And it may be 12 out of 18 or 12 out of like 20, whatever. So the percentage changes quite a lot, actually, once you do the calculation and the math here. So this is what the repeater module does. It basically repeats through each of the day names, the days, gets the start date formatted by the time zone into a day, and then it just sums up the number of work days, and it does something similar for the workable days here. Sums up the workable days, and it calculates all that based on how many days are in the payroll month and when they started, etc. And then it modifies the payment amount. It's a fairly complex calculation, but it modifies the payment amount for their salary for the first month and also for the last month, because it also runs for the end date as well as the start date. So that's I mean, the repeater module is probably the smallest part of this scenario, but it is being used here. It is used sort of for fairly niche uses throughout Make, but when you need to repeat something multiple times, then the repeater module saves the day there. There are other ways of sort of forcing a repeater module out of sticky tape and and some sticks to build one custom, but Make has a repeater module built in. It is very powerful. The only thing that I would hazard against is if you have too many repeats on a scenario, then what you might want to do, particularly if you've got a very lengthy process that happens after that repeater module. For instance, if you tried to do a 100 module process and you wanted to do it 100 times for a thing, well, now that's 10,000 steps that have to be completed. You'll most likely hit rate limits and things like that with that. What you'd be better off doing is breaking that repeater part out into a separate scenario. And so this would be one scenario stopping here. And then you'd trigger another scenario to do that heavy lifting part via a webhook. You'd trigger it via a webhook and you'd send across just the information that you need. And then those webhooks can queue up as the previous webhooks take time to process. And that way you won't hit the 40-minute execution time limit, and you can also add in some weights so that you don't hit the rate limits on the different apps that you're using, and add in pauses and things. So that's what I'd recommend if you're really repeating a lot. If you're just doing a simple calculation like this, you can certainly leave it in the scenario, that's fine. And even for this, where there's quite a hefty thing at the end, we're only going to be creating, say, 5, maybe 10 invoices, and this is not that many modules after that. So this is still a fairly lightweight thing. But if you were trying to put 4 times the size of this after a repeater, and you had 100 repeats there, you're going to hit the maximum execution time, and you're going to hit rate limits for Coda and QuickBooks and Mailgun and all those sort of things, because you're pinging the servers too quickly, right? You're repeating too quickly. Okay, so hopefully that's given you a bit of an explanation of repeaters and just a little bit of troubleshooting there if you are going to be using those extensively.